pulled me out of that dark hole that I was in.
Wow. Shout out to her. Yeah, I went through a similar journey. I was at a super low point and my fiance got me out.
Yeah. I mean, they say that behind every successful man is a woman that pushed him.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe that. I've, been a testament of that because of my wife pushing me to levels that I don't think I would have gone myself.
All right, guys. Got Grant here today from Dallas. Flew in. Luckily, he brought the suit because it's cold out today.
Yeah. It is a lot colder than I was expecting.
Yeah, you think of Vegas, you think of desert heat.
Exactly. I was thinking 100-degree heat, similar to Texas, but luckily I brought a jacket.
For real. What you been doing out there in Dallas lately?
So we're actually in the process of moving. I just had a kid, 7 months old now.
Congrats.
So, yeah, it's been busy between a kid and moving. It's a lot.
Where are you moving to?
Out to the suburbs a little bit, more rural area, the North Lake. It's out by the racetrack. So
Okay.
we're finally moving out of the city. The city's just getting too crowded for us, and we're just want some peace and quiet.
Yeah, I feel like, in your younger years, city life is appealing. And then as you have a family and kids, it's like, let me move out to the farms.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. So and plus, like, I have a son, so he, just wants to run around, and giving him more space to run around is, what I want to give him.
I love that. You've been in Dallas for a while?
That's where I grew up. I went to California for a little bit in college, and then Oklahoma, and then moved back to Dallas. Gosh, that was almost 8 years ago now.
Okay.
So been in Dallas a while.
Why'd you choose Cali for college?
It was forced. I was playing college football, and I went to junior college out there in California, and then transferred from junior college to Oklahoma State, finished out my career there, and then moved back to Dallas from there.
Got it. You wanted to make it to the NFL? That was your goal?
Yeah, that was the plan, but it didn't work out. Tore my shoulder up, and actually went back to be a lifeguard.
Whoa.
My only plan was to go play NFL, and it didn't work out. And so then I went to go be a lifeguard. Ended up having shoulder surgery, so couldn't save anybody's life if they were drowning. So I lost that job, and then got into finance through a church pastor. He said, hey, you were good at math. Do you want to come do this job interview? And I did it. The owner at the time was a Harvard MBA, taught me everything he knew, and then it brought me to where I am now, which is running a tax and accounting firm.
I love it, man. I want to go back to that story of the shoulder tear. Was that the lowest you've been mentally in that moment?
Probably when I had my shoulder surgery and I even lost my lifeguarding job.
Oh, that was the moment. Okay.
When I couldn't even hold a job as a lifeguard after being a college graduate, to me, I felt pretty low. I, was living with my parents, and, between living at your parents and losing a job as a lifeguard, you feel pretty low at that point.
Absolutely.
But, my wife, she was my girlfriend at the time, helped me get out of that hole, encouraged me to go take that job interview, which pulled me out of that dark hole that I was in.
Wow. Sure. Shout out to her. Yeah, I went through a similar journey. I was at a super low point, and my fiance got me out.
Yeah. I mean, they say that behind every successful man is a woman that pushed him.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe that. I've, been a testament of that because of my wife pushing me to levels that I don't think I would have gone myself. Because sometimes we get in these comfort zones that we're like, man, this feels good. I'm good. But whenever somebody is behind you pushing you, like, I believe in you, you can do more, you can do better. Like, there's something inside of us that's like, man, I don't want to let them down.
100%.
And so,
especially when kids get in the mix too.
Oh yeah. I sit down and I look at my son and I'm like, okay, I got to go even harder for him.
Yeah.
Not my wife was one level, and then my son is an extra level. Cause my wife, if she was to be on her own, she could provide for herself. My son, if he's on his own, he can't provide for himself.
Facts.
You're the only source there. So it's like this internal burning of like, I've got to go.
Yeah.
I've got to get it going.
And I'm seeing a lot of my friends now and people I know just have trouble raising kids because of finances.
Yeah.
And it's sad to see.
Yeah. And that's my book that I'm finishing up writing, Genetics of Wealth. 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck.
Jeez.
And don't even have $1,000 in their savings account. I mean, that's an insane amount. When I did that research, I was shocked.
Crazy.
I mean, I knew that people's finances weren't in great spots, but I was shocked that it was that high. I mean, you walk around and 8 out of every 10 people you see don't even have $1,000 in their bank account.
That's nuts.
Which means, 1 month's rent and you're done. 1 hard month and you're done.
Yeah.
Which is scary, especially when you have wife and kids. It gets even scarier.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's why you need a safety net these days because you don't know what's going to pop up. I've had I'm a homeowner now, and I've just had random stuff popping up. It's like, damn.
Yeah.
Average person wouldn't be able to afford this.
No. And I mean, I have a lot of clients that, $40,000 here, $20,000 here by owning a home, and it's like, whoa. And you're like, dude, I put all my money on the down payment. What is all this stuff?
Yeah, no, that happened to me. I had to dip into my savings because I wasn't prepared for all these additional expenses. We just had to replace the fridge yesterday. That's $2,000. So the stuff like that's pretty normal as a homeowner.
Right. Yeah, and that's for me. I'm a big proponent of renting.
Oh yeah,
because for me, it's especially during these times, it's like, if you do the cost that it would be to own the home versus what it is to rent the home, I mean, it's astronomical. Like the home that we're moving into, if I was to own that home, I'd pay an extra $3,000 a month in mortgage. That's just the mortgage. So I'm saving $36,000 before any other expenses. And, if anything pops up, I call the landlord, he comes and fixes it.
Yeah.
If you do the math, it's like, wow. And because the banks really own the home. You're either paying your rent to a landlord or you're paying your rent to the bank. Because the bank, as soon as you miss a payment, the bank's going to come take that home. Just like if I rent and I miss a payment, the landlord's going to come take the home. The difference is when something breaks, I call the landlord, they come fix it. If you try and call the bank and say, hey, this broke, and y'all come fix it, they're going to be like, no way. I'm not fixing that for you. And so especially in this country, the banks have been protected for everything.
They'll get bailed out.
Yeah. I mean, they're going to get bailed out. Homes were built for the banks to make money.
100%.
And, if you look at a mortgage, you pay all your interest up front, and then you start building equity on the back end. Because they don't even trust us to pay the mortgage long term. And so they're like, hey, I'm going to put all of our interest up front rather than, hey, we'll space it out, because they don't even trust us to do that. And to me, it's crazy that because I was raised, hey, you make a family, you buy a home, that's the American dream. And I'm like, because I was going to buy a home. And I was like, once I started doing the numbers, I was like, I can't buy a home. It just doesn't make financial sense to me. You put $200,000 down on a down payment, and then, you have to do all the repairs, and you're like, man, I just dumped all my savings to buy this home.
Yep.
Which is what a lot of people do. And then they're like, I think it's about 1% a year is what you have to pay in repairs. People don't have that. They furnish the home, and they're like, I'm good to go. And it's a scary reality. It's a scary thing that, my wife and I said, if we're going to buy a house, it'll be in cash. I don't have that cash, so I'm not buying a house. And because it just doesn't make financial sense.
Yeah. With the interest rates, it doesn't make sense for most people. I'd say.
Yeah.
If it goes back down to 2, 3, maybe it makes more sense for some families. But right now it's like 7, 8%. So.
Yeah. And, the hard part is when it was down that low, the housing prices were inflated so high that it's like you're overpaying for a house. And that, at least it was in Dallas.
Yeah.
In Dallas, I would look at homes, and they were $600,000 homes now going for $1.2 million, and you're like, this is a $600,000 house, and people are paying $1.2 million. Even with the low interest rate, that still doesn't make sense.
That's true. Yeah, they were inflated because everyone from Cali moved over.
Yeah. So it's the housing market is one of those things. Real estate is a big thing, especially in tax as well. Like it's a big thing. A lot of people want to go into it, but really what it is the government's trying to protect the banks. That's why the tax code has so many advantages for real estate, because they want you to do business with the banks. They want you to make money for the banks.
Yeah, because their incentives are aligned, right?
Exactly.
Like if the banks make money, the government makes money.
Exactly.
So they want the banks to succeed.
Yep, because the way the banks make money is off of the interest rates, federal interest rates. So they're like, hey, we're going to get our money from them. And so they want to keep that wheel churning.
Right.
They don't want that wheel to stop.
Yeah. The interest rates on credit cards are pretty insane too. Like 40%, right?
Yeah. I mean, depending on your credit score, they can get up to like 40%.
Crazy.
I mean, and people will run them up because they're like, hey, I have a $20,000 limit. That's how much I have to spend. And it's like, no, I always tell people, if you treat a credit card like a debit card, you'll be fine. Pay it off every single month. If you have it in your bank account, spend it. If you don't spend it.
Yeah.
Because credit card is the worst one. I think it's Mark Cuban that he said people ask him what the best investment is, and he said paying off your credit cards, because nowhere else are you going to find a 40% return on your money.
I saw that. Yeah. Dave Ramsey's against credit cards too.
Yeah. And I'm not against credit cards. I think credit cards are great. You're losing out on money if you don't use them, but it's incorrectly using them.
Right.
That gets people into trouble.
Yeah, I feel that. So you agree with Grant Cardone then about renting? That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And I actually am an investor with Cardone Capital.
Oh, nice.
So the money that I was going to pay on a down payment on a home, I actually put it into there. I get the tax deduction each year for owning the real estate, and I get the cash flow that he pays out every single month.
Oh, nice.
So, to me, I was like, wow, I mean, that cash flow pays my rent. So now, like, I don't even have to cover that because it's paid for by the rental properties.
And that's a great feeling when you could live off your passive income. That should be everyone's first goal, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
get to that level.
I mean, and like, it didn't make sense to me at first until the checks started flowing in. And then you're like, wow, this makes sense. If this can eventually cover what I'm paying in rent, then I don't pay anything.
Right.
And, if any repairs happen, they're not on me. So I can sit there and I can go out and go on a vacation and not have to worry about, man, am I going to need that couple $1,000s I just spent on vacation? I don't need it, because if a repair goes off, it's not my responsibility.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's a nice financial freedom is being able to live stress-free. That to me.
Absolutely. Trump just won a couple days ago. Is that going to be good for taxes, you think?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if he gets things passed through, he'd propose 15% corporate tax, which as a tax professional, that changes things a lot, because currently S corporations is what a lot of people talk about, what's good for people. But now capped at a 15% tax rate, if you do U.S. business, that's a game changer.
Yeah.
Because if once you reach a certain threshold, the S corporation doesn't really make sense, because you're passing it through to yourself. You're paying too much in taxes. You're taxed at the income rate, active income rate, rather than if you're capped at 15%, you can make $100 million and all you're gonna have to pay is $15 million
Wow.
taxes.
Because right now it's what, like 30 something percent?
No, right now it's at 21.
Oh, 21.
Because Trump put that in place, but he's even proposing making it even lower.
Wow.
And so, that becomes a huge incentive, especially for people that want to keep a lot of cash in the business. Some people are like, hey, I'll move it around, put it in different things. It won't make that big of a difference to those people.
Yeah.
But those that are like, hey, I want to keep a cash reserve, if Apple decides to move all of their stuff, domestic, that's a huge gain for them because they keep a lot of cash. But, if you do work overseas, he said he's going to keep you at 20. But if you bring everything domestic, so he's trying to bring the jobs back into America.
Right.
Which is important. And, a lot of people are upset that he would lower the tax rate, but he's saying, hey, look, I'm trying to bring more jobs, which will then be taxed at W-2 taxes. People pay W-2 taxes on those jobs that they're bringing in. So the government's going to get their money still.
Yeah.
It's just a different way of doing it. He's trying to incentivize people to move like get people back in the workforce.
Makes sense.
So
That's the side of the argument you don't hear, because you see these liberals talking about, oh, tax the rich, and Trump wants to lower them, but they don't hear the other side of why he wants to lower them. He's going to make money with the way you just said too.
Exactly. And I've never been a proponent of, taxing the rich because, if you think about it, like you're middle class, lower class, and you find something that you finally get your big break and you make a large year, let's say you make $1 million.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey, I've finally gotten my break. Well, if you're taxing the rich, now you're going to undercut that, and now you're back into the middle class because you got taxed so hard that your great year turned into just an average year. And to me, that's not fair. I'm like, hey, look, if you have your great year, go out and continue to build and grow that business. Like what you've done here, you got your own studio, you're expanding your business, you're hiring people, you have people.
Yeah.
That's what it should be about. It shouldn't be, hey, let's try and undercut Sean. As soon as he starts to reach that level, let's start taxing him harder so he stays down. To me, that doesn't make sense. I'm like, we should be encouraging those people who are growing and incentivize them to keep growing. Hire people, continue to make success in what you're doing, and not say, hey, we're going to, take 37% of what you make. And I mean, if you live in New York or one of these states that has state income, it's even higher than that.
Cali.
Yeah. I mean, that's why a lot of people move. That's why Musk moved Tesla out of California. He's like, I'm paying a ridiculous amount in
50%.
taxes. You move to Texas, you don't have any of that.
Yeah.
So to me, it's about the people who are generating jobs are going to help, because I mean, a lot of people don't realize the cause and effect. If you start taxing Amazon higher, they're not going to just say, okay, we're going to just take this tax hit. No, they pass it through to us. They pass it through to the average American, and they are going to raise the prices. Now your, toilet paper that you bought on there for $10 is now $20 because they're getting taxed harder. So they're like, all right, well, we got to raise the prices.
Right.
They don't just say, all right, we're going to take this tax.
Nah, not at that level.
Exactly.
Because their margins are already thin at that level. So if they get
Exactly.
another tax, they're going to charge more for sure.
Exactly. And so that's what, people don't think about those sort of things. They just, want to tax the rich because they make money.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you don't realize they're not going to just take that tax hit. They're paying people like myself to find all the tax loopholes to make sure that they don't have to pay that.
Right. Yeah, the super wealthy don't even pay to begin with, so
Exactly.
it wouldn't work.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's so many loopholes.
Yeah. And the tax code is longer than an encyclopedia.
That's
So
crazy.
there's so many things that you can do when it comes to the tax code that I'm like, they're gonna find a way.
Yeah.
They're not just gonna take it.
Yeah, I'm pumped for Trump to bring back the 100% write-offs for vehicles and airplanes and stuff.
Yeah, and that I saw something the other day. I had a client send me something about I think his name was TheStradman.
Heard of him?
The car guy on YouTube.
Yeah.
And he had posted this thing about he got hit with a $500,000 tax.
Whoa.
He got audited, and they fined him $500,000 because of the car. So he, in the video, he talked about how he had one of those big Jeeps with like 6 wheels.
Yeah.
And he's like, this one's over 6,000 pounds. And then the Aventador was under 6,000 pounds. But his tax person had told him, hey, you can take the full 100% deduction for this car because you're using it for business purposes. You need it to generate money. And with those things, you have to be careful with the special exemptions. And where they got it wrong was he was told that, but in order to be able to do that, you have to have no other ways to make money. So, he talked about a hearse driver. Well, the difference between him and a hearse driver is they have that hearse and they have to drive that hearse to, be able to do their job, or else they don't have a job. But in the video, he proved the IRS's point. He showed, I made $10,000 off of the Jeep. I made $20,000 off of the Aventador. But what he showed was he was making money off of the other one. So the Aventador wasn't necessary for him to run that business. So he should have taken the regular deduction.
Wow.
Which is what they ended up fining him for. And, you have the fines and the interest and all that. So he had to pay $500,000 that if he had just done it correctly, he probably would have paid half of that, maybe.
And that sucks because you put your trust in these accountants.
Exactly.
Because you don't have the time to study all those tax codes yourself.
No. And like for me, I try to tell all my clients, I say, I'm not going to tell you no. I'm going to tell you what you need to make it a yes. And then you can decide whether or not you want to make it a yes or not. If you can't answer, if you can't do A, B, C, D, then you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I think too many people in my industry just want to make the people happy. And in reality, you're their bodyguard. You're their financial bodyguard because his person did not protect him. And his accountant sure didn't pull out his wallet when that $500,000 was owed.
Definitely not.
He didn't say, oh, that's my bad. I told you wrong. Here, let me cut the check. They don't. And so, like, to me, I was telling my client last night at dinner, I said, I am your financial bodyguard. I'll tell you, hey, stay away from this, go over here. But if you venture into that, I warned you.
Yeah.
And a good bodyguard tells them, hey, don't go here, go here, type of thing. And so I always tell my clients, I'm like, hey, if you want to do this, you need to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And like on the car one, I had a client that loves cars. He's a big car guy. And he's like, I want to buy cars, but I don't want to rent them out on Turo, all this stuff that people will tell you, okay, if you want cars, you can do this. So he has a podcast where, he wants high net worth people to come to. And so I said, okay, in order to do that, you're going to have to, you can't just be like, hey, Mark Cuban, here's a $100 Amazon card. Will you come on my show? He's going to be like, I don't need that.
Yeah.
But if you're like, hey, Mark, I've got a suite at the Mavs game for you. I've got a Rolls Royce whenever you get here that you can use up until the podcast. He might be like, wow, okay, this is rolling out the red carpet. That might be incentivizing.
Smart.
So we had him, he bought 5 cars. And whenever he invites a guest, he invites them to come out to a Rangers game.
Yeah.
He has a suite. They'll go to the game. He says, hey, here's our list of cars. So he lists them out. So
wow.
Now there's proof. There's written proof that these are business cars. He says, hey, here's the cars that we have. Let us know which car you want to be dropped off at the airport. So they choose the car. It gets dropped off at the airport. They take it. They drive to the game. Then they'll drive to the podcast the next day with it. They get it while they're there. They drop it off whenever they get to the podcast. But now all those cars can be written off because they're business use.
Wow.
And so that, I tell people, is, getting creative with the tax code.
Yeah.
Because now we're able to write off a Rangers suite at the Rangers game. So he pays, whatever the fee is for the year.
That ain't cheap.
That gets to write off because it's marketing. It's trying to get people in. You got to, in order to get, high net worth people, you can't, like I said, you can't just toss something light at them.
Yeah, dinner's not enough for those people.
Exactly. You have to roll out the red carpet for them, and and then you may still get turned down even at that point.
Yeah.
But at least you're giving yourself a chance. It's now ordinary and necessary, which is what the IRS says you need in order to write stuff off, and all those cars now get to get written off because of business use.
So they don't even have to be 6,000 pounds.
Nope.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. So that's one of those things where you have to be, and it's documented. And that's the big thing is, it's documented who goes to those games. It's documented who uses the cars. All documentation will get you out of a lot.
Yeah, because if you get audited, they're going to be asking for that first.
Exactly. That's and a lot of times they won't even go through long audits if you have good paper trails.
Oh, yeah.
If you have good accounting, if you have good receipts, if you have good contracts, they're like, all right, we're not going to waste our time here.
Smart.
But if they're like, hey, let us see your operating agreement, you're like, oh, I don't got one. Then they're going to be like, okay, our time will be, we'll get our money's worth here. But if you're like, here's our operating agreement, here's all our receipts, here's our accounting, it's clean, it's easy to find, then they're like, all right, we're not going to waste our time.
Yeah.
You know, we'll go find somebody that is not organized, which, I mean, there's a lot of people who are unorganized and they get a lot of money from them.
Oh, I bet.
And so I always tell people, I'm like, if you have good contracts and you have good receipts and you have good accounting, a lot of times you'll be done in a couple days.
That's why I don't cheap out on it. It's one of those things as entrepreneurs, like you want to get the best deal on, but I'd rather have peace of mind.
Exactly. Because you don't want them to knock on your door and $500,000 go out the window because
that would ruin the business, honestly.
Exactly. And that's, I mean, lucky for him, he had the money and it didn't ruin his business. But to a lot of people, $500,000 in back taxes ruin them.
Oh, yeah. Because then they could take liens out and who knows what else they could do.
Exactly.
They got a lot of power.
Yeah. I mean, they can have access to your bank accounts.
Really?
Yeah. If it gets that bad, they can have access to your bank accounts. They'll garnish your wages, all that.
Damn. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Are you dealing with a lot of athletes since you got a football background?
Not as many, because it's hard. They get paid W-2.
Yeah.
And so the majority of the incentives that you can do is through stock market and real estate. For us, we work a lot with personal brands, and being able to have serial entrepreneurs have multiple ventures, and we can spread out what we need through those.
Yeah.
So influencers and things like that, we get a lot of those because I say the Kardashians, they laid out the greatest tax strategy of all time. And people didn't realize it. But whenever you look at it, all their trips to Gucci, Louis Vuitton, their house, everything that they ever did was a tax write-off.
Wow.
Because they were on the show.
Crazy.
In order to do the show, in order to get people to watch the show, they had to go shopping on Rodeo Drive. People wouldn't watch if they went, just up the street to the gas station. But everything they did, the house, the cars, the purses, the clothing, all of it, 100% written off.
Wow.
Because they made their lifestyle the business. And that's where I kind of had that unlock was, wow, people can live their lives and write off on the taxes. That's better than, any real estate deal you can do because you're just living your life and all of it becomes a tax write-off. I mean, Gary Vee was another one. He didn't realize he was doing a tax strategy either, but, he said document your whole life, and let that become your business because then you can say, like The Rock.
Yeah.
I think he's the biggest personal brand I think there probably is. He started so many different businesses. He started a energy drink, and then he did
alcohol.
I mean, he does everything because he has a personal brand. He can do something random off the wall, and people are going to buy it.
Yeah,
because he built that personal brand. But he can now write off his whole lifestyle. He's like, I like to drink tequila. Let me start a tequila brand. So now, anytime he goes and drinks tequila, it can be used as research.
That's awesome.
So it's crazy that I tell people, figure out what you like to do. And let's figure out how to make it a business. Yeah. Because then you can keep doing that and you don't have to pay taxes on it.
I love that. So building a personal brand is one of the biggest tax write-offs you can have done.
Yeah.
For people watching this.
To me, it is the greatest tax strategy of all time. Better than real estate, better than anything you can do because you're just living your life.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what you want. You want to just be able to live your life and not have to pay taxes.
That'd be great. Imagine going on a cruise or a vacation and you could write off some of it.
You could write off all of it if you're documenting it.
Really? So if you're just posting content on social media about it?
Yeah.
Wow.
That trip, if you're posting about, hey, I'm on this, Royal Caribbean cruise, and you're posting, hey, look at this room, all this. That's a tax write-off.
I need to start doing that.
Yeah, because you're there, and let's say you decide you want to rent out one of the rooms and film a podcast on the cruise. Now that trip is you film one podcast a day. The whole thing's a write-off now.
Wow.
You just have to do business each day that you're there, and the whole thing can be written off.
Crazy. What if it's just a business call or like a meeting?
Those ones are a little bit tricky, as long as you take like meeting minutes or things like that. But in order for those ones to be there, the government might say, hey, did you really have to be on a cruise ship to have that car? But if you do the podcast, if you bring some equipment, just do like a light podcast there, then they're like, well, yeah, you had to be there because
Right.
because you're filming it. And those ones I tell people, I'm like, if they can't knock that you had to be there, you're solid. Because you post this on YouTube that, hey, we filmed this on the cruise ship. They can't argue with it. You documented it. It's out there.
That'd actually be a cool idea. Just bringing a pod studio to a cruise and like interviewing random people I meet there.
Exactly.
That'd be funny.
Yeah. I think it's what the Hard Knocks guy where he just goes, all of his stuff. He
School
gets
of
to
Hard
write
Knocks.
off. Yeah, he gets to write off all those trips because all he does is he just goes, walks out, finds people. Now the whole trip, completely write off.
Yeah, Daniel Mack does that too.
Yeah.
What would you do for a living?
Exactly.
Yeah, interesting.
And I mean, the thing is a lot of people don't even realize they're laying out these great tax strategies for people. They're just doing
Right.
and I'm like, oh wow, that is a really great strategy if you just put the pieces together.
Well, not a lot of people are on top of it like you. Because
Yeah.
a lot of these accounts are on the older side. They don't know about this social media game, these personal brand write-offs. That's not like a common thing,
No. And I mean, a lot of times, the thing is people will just go off of real estate. That's a lot of people, they'll be like, oh, we work with real estate investors because it's an easier one. You get the depreciation and all that stuff. And then it's like, hey, this is an easy one. But it's harder to dig in the tax code to find, like I laid out with the cars and the, the suite. That one takes a lot more time. I have to do some digging. I have to find what sort of documentation we need rather than like, all right, I just depreciate this real estate asset.
Right.
It's a lot easier. You can run through a lot of people with that, but it takes a lot more time to figure out, hey, let me do this, let me research, figure out how we can do this.
Yeah. How does the real estate one work?
So, real estate, you buy a piece of real estate, and what a lot of people will do is they'll do cost segregation studies, which is where you break down the asset into its individual parts, like the plumbing, the electrical, those sort of things. And you say, okay, I can depreciate the electrical in 5 years rather than 30 years. So that amount gets depreciated faster and it becomes a bigger one. So, it's typically around 30% of the asset. So, just for easy math purposes, if it was $100,000 real estate, you could write off about 30% in the first year.
Just for owning the real estate?
Right.
Oh, wow.
But you have to do that cost segregation study, which, sometimes will run you about between $5,000 and $15,000. So
Damn.
you have to, it has to be a decent piece of real estate in order to be like, a lot of people do it on big ones, like over $1 million.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you're going to pay $15,000 to have that done. You better get a lot more than $15,000 in a tax write-off.
Wow. I might have to look into that one then.
Yeah.
Because my house is $2 million, but I only put down 20%, so I don't have the full equity.
Right. But if you're using that house for business purposes and it's a business asset, that cost segregation study can be done breaking off the individual pieces.
Got it.
So, like if, like I said, the plumbing, let's say the plumbing is $200,000 in the house, throughout the whole house. And it's going to depreciate faster than the electrical. Let's say it goes 5 years. Now that 200,000 is now broken up into 40,000 pieces over the next 5 years. So that's where you can get those breaks. If and a lot of people will use it on W-2 people because they don't have any business expenses. And they'll say, okay, go out and buy this rental property, and we'll do a cost segregation study on it.
Yeah.
So that's the big one for a lot of real estate professionals is the cost segregation study. And if they didn't do it in the past, you can do what's called a look back study as well, where they'll take, ones, I think it's like 1987, you can go back far, and do them from there. And a lot of people, say, hey, let me get this for you. And so they'll get big tax deductions in that first year because they went back, if you had 1987, you got like, you got like 30 years right there, or even longer than that. That like almost
35.
40, yeah. You got a lot of years of depreciation that you can write off for that in that first year, and so that's where people, win you over in the first year.
That makes sense. Have you had clients try to move to Puerto Rico?
I know that tax strategy, but I haven't had any clients that have actually wanted to do it.
Yeah, it
They're
doesn't
like,
seem
hey,
worth
what does
it.
it look like? And I'm like, you got to live there for, what is it, 6 months and 1
months,
day or
yeah.
something, more than half the year, just barely more than half the year. And a lot of people are like, I'm dying to come back to the U.S.
Yeah, I haven't heard many positive stories.
Exactly. So, to me, I always look, it's like, is it a bigger hassle than, what you're going to get out of it? And do you really want to be tax-free and have to live in Puerto Rico for
Yeah.
50% of the year? I don't know. Maybe you do. But for most people, they're like, I want to live in the U.S.
Yeah, I could see moving states. I've done
Yeah.
that. I've moved from Cali to Vegas.
Yeah.
But
That's
moving,
a smart move.
moving countries is that's a whole nother level.
Yeah. Because, it's totally different living. Moving from state to state, it's like, it's still America. But you move to a different country, and it's totally different.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Grant, what's next for you, man? Where can people watching this get your services and learn more about you?
Yeah, so they can find us at abundantx.com, which is my tax and accounting firm. They can also find me on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter at Grant G. Newell.
Perfect. We'll link it below. Thanks for coming on, man. That was
Thank you.
awesome. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Check out the links. See you next time.